for a man named Mudger.
A House of the Dragon video.
And for a fellow named Clay.
A House of the Dragon video.
Favors are not in your name.
No, Your Grace. Therefore...
A House of the Dragon video.
House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 4 is here, and it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's a lot I really liked about this episode, there's a lot I didn't like, there's a lot where I feel people are increasingly misunderstanding the point, and today I want to talk about all of that. Episode 4 is largely an episode of preparations, as Ormund Hightower waits to see if Aemond will support him following his capture of Tumbleton. Rhaenyra spends time searching out information about Ormund before responding, Hugh does a shift waiting atop a dragon, Larys and Aegon continue their journey to Mordor. We lose a lot of the tight build intention that gave episode 3 so much momentum, and I think that is a shame. This episode feels slightly aimless in places, and yet I think it would be easy to be unfair about this episode. There's a lot I want to say, so if you're interested, check out this cool train. So we're going to start with what works, and principally that's Ormund Hightower. I've really liked James Norton as an actor ever since Happy Valley, and he kills it here with the right mix of sinister, but also fun, but never overdoing it. If this episode has a main focus, it's him. We start this episode not really knowing who he is, and just like Rhaenyra, we're trying to learn, trying to understand more. What begins by seeming like just a slightly smug and overly precise guy with a ratatouille sense of smell, slowly unveils into someone with a brutish rage, merely attempting to pin it all back with the precision and the cleanliness and the rigid piety. A man who professes to be a scholar where the Targaryens are brutes, but you can feel a strong level of projection beneath there, a level of pleasure in vindictiveness, and the obvious irony when he chides Darragh as sounding like a Targaryen for suggesting mercy.
Is not mercy a kingly virtue? That sounds like something your father would say.
I think the need for pleasant smells works as quite a nice metaphor for someone pretending to be more virtuous and sophisticated than reality suggests. I love the fanatical edge to all of his superiority. I love how slowly he is unveiled across the episode. It's a strong framing device here. And also, I think there is an irony. Unless I'm mistaken, his plan is effectively to garrison his forces in a town that, whilst it lacks defences, will have his men dispersed through the homes of innocent citizens, taunting Rhaenyra to burn the whole town in an effort to kill them, killing innocents too, and perhaps would brand her as a mad queen as a result. However, Rhaenyra isn't mad at all. I think she's veering towards cruelty, and I've said it sometimes frustrates me how the show keeps teasing that change only to drop back again. Last episode ended with her staring viciously into a bonfire. This episode have suddenly taken a step back from that. However, even if she's heading in that direction and may likely be painted as mad by her enemies, she's not mad. Out of the two, Ormund is the much less stable one. So let's talk about Rhaenyra a bit, actually.
What's it say?
Get 51% off World Anvil!
Hightower loyalists trying to fight a war they lost.
World Anvil! Yep, they are sponsoring this video. World Anvil is an online tool for game masters, for writers, for tabletop RPG players and world builders. An online tool for designing worlds, creating characters, chronicling history, planning and managing campaigns from a plethora of different games. My best friend uses it for our D&D campaign, I use it for planning my novel. Far better and easier than the scraps of random A4 paper stuffed into a drawer that used to constitute my creative process. Not only can I keep everything in one place where I can easily edit anything I want to, but I can create timelines, hyperlinks branching off to specific characters or articles, family trees, a billion other things. You can even link them all to maps, like here's this basic map I made years ago. If I click on the character Tess, it sends me straight to her page where everything is redacted, and that's like the most basic thing you can do with your maps. There's other creators whose world building looks so much nicer than mine. There's a whole community network on World Anvil if that's your thing. There's so many different cool features for everything you may possibly need. In general, there's been lots of great updates recently, making the interface even simpler and smoother than it already was. World Anvil is great. I am genuinely passionate. I hope you can hear that. And if you desire, if you crave, If you call to the heavens for a 51% discount, then use the code TREE, or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. And if you just want to try out the free version, then go for it. There's no time limit. Test it out for as long as you want. World Anvil. Rhaenyra again gets a lot of focus this episode as she tries to shore up her reign, but I think we can feel some of the consequences to her previous mistakes creeping in now. There's quite a few, but the example I like best is the graffiti in King's Landing claiming her the Queen of Bastards. I would bet money on one of the lords and ladies she offended so much last episode being behind this. Most small folk are illiterate, of course, and these highborn would have an axe to grind, and Rhaenyra, having this obvious insecurity here, especially because it's true, is angered by the slander. She's generally very, very worried about how her image appears, especially to the small folk. Often I think a little too anxious about that, and she sends the gold cloaks to brutalise anyone who did this graffiti, or at least anyone they can force a confession from, but I think this is unlikely to soften disorder or to win people round. Plus, these are gold cloaks Daemon tells us are lacking in numbers. She gives away gold they've secured as arms to the poor. When she's already done that political gesture there last time, doing it again is obviously a good thing, but it doesn't actually solve the problem for the poor. I don't think it staves off lawlessness very long either. At the same time, she bans Ulf from visiting his favourite tavern, or taverns in general. This is 2 dragon seeds now she's failing to prioritise, despite how vital they are for her. I feel for Ulf. It's a really difficult situation going back to his pub as someone rich and powerful now, and clearly all of his mates have pressured him to get something out of it. I love how drunk and awkward he sounds, but he's only really trying to get his friends some stability in life. As flawed as the attempts may be, I mean, I love how he just brushes over giving Clay a pardon for various small crimes. These were his people though, and whilst it's not the best strategy, it's sweet Ulf doesn't want to completely abandon them. And I feel like if you want to win people round with political stunts, letting Ulf walk amongst the people who can tell them personally what Rhaenyra is like, can give them a positive impression, that's a useful risk to take. What better message than under Queen Rhaenyra, even a simple tavern man like me can be raised to the heights of power. Although, of course, that would equally undermine the idea that the Targaryens are gods above men, but either way, she chooses Goldcloak thuggery without funding them and makes life likely quite miserable for Ulf. I'm sure he will just put up with this forever. If I'm honest, I don't think there's many decisions Rhaenyra does make that are right or good this episode, even if all her decisions aren't necessarily bad. I think this is the thing a lot of people seem to be misunderstanding about this show, and I get it in the comments constantly. People complaining about how stupid Rhaenyra is, criticising the show for painting her like some great heroine when actually all of her actions are terrible. How are the writers this idiotic? People often start talking about feminism or wokeness in relation to that. But who said we were ever meant to see Rhaenyra as a brilliant, flawless heroine, or Alicent either, or anyone? This whole story is quite clearly a tragedy about a totally unnecessary civil war plunging the entire realm into chaos and crippling the House of the Dragon. That's hardly going to be a story of people making lots of brilliant and sensible decisions. Rhaenyra is a character we can understand, and I empathise with, even if she's not always the best person, but I think anyone looking at this show expecting it to be like a battle of wits between chess grandmasters severely misunderstands the story. I think the marketing of the Team Green versus Team Black may have contributed to that, to be fair, but it's not a choice between sides. There isn't a correct side. No one is good here. Rhaenyra is flawed, and a lot of the time with this show, people making dumb decisions is the fun. Criston Cole has just decided to take the fight against an army 20 times his size. I'm sure that's a totally sensible move he won't regret. I'm not entirely sure what Ormund's wider plan is, but something tells me he's not quite the master tactician he thinks he is. The decisions are often dumb, but that's not really how I view them anyway. More character driven, more human, understandable given who the people are. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is a blanket argument for everything in this show. Just last episode I mentioned how weird it was that no one took any very ordinary precautions that would have prevented them mistaking this random kid for Darragh. I'm not saying the writing is flawless, because it's not. There are definitely things to criticise, but I am saying we shouldn't just take every bad character move at face value. Or at the very least, we shouldn't assume the characters are supposed to be written as all politically astute. Even the few who are still have massive blind spots. I found Rhaenyra so fun to watch these last 2 episodes because you can feel her stretched so thin, attempting to seem regal but also desperate for people she can trust underneath. That's really difficult for her right now. She got like
maybe Missaria and Daemon, who has just lied to her this episode about Rhaenyra. Corlys is gone. Torren Manderly is up to something. Her old small council and even her own Lord Commander betrayed her. I've not liked all of these scenes where she keeps going to talk to Alicent. It feels like it killed all of the dynamic that has been building up between them, but when you realise how desperate she is for someone to trust and confide in, it kind of makes sense. It's a mark of how lost she feels that she keeps going to Alicent. I understand why you would choose Alicent. I understand why you would choose Alicent in the context of everything. There is something tragic even in that. And likely everything is going to get a lot worse. This episode is one of setup, and I don't know what's going to happen in Tumbleton because I've only read Fire and Blood up to roughly where this season started. I'm going to read on after this season is over and we can compare the two in a whole video about it, but it seems like something massive is coming now and I am excited for it. So when I call this episode a little bit aimless, perhaps I'm being unfair, but on the other hand, let me share this point. I'm getting a bit frustrated with the Larys and Aegon scenes. To begin with, it struck me as a really fun pairing, but the problem we have is, one, every scene is basically the same. It's them getting somewhere and a bit of tension where they have to hide their identities from someone who questions them, and there's a nervy moment of if they're going to find out, and then they mostly find a way out of the jam. It's been that every episode, and two, Aegon isn't really learning anything. The one thing you'd hope he would have learned by now is to temper his pride, but he's still making that mistake again here. And I just feel like, character-wise, where is this going? We've had 4 episodes now. This could have been a great opportunity for a spoilt child to experience life of the small folk, to gain a new understanding of them, but there's been no real exploration. Just putting Aegon in one dangerous situation after another with petty criminals and wayward guards. You know, it would be hard to have an arc of Aegon becoming like a better person, because in past seasons they made his worst traits awful. It does become harder to have a story of him growing feel satisfying when he's not a good man, and so instead it doesn't yet feel like it's going anywhere other than to Duskendale, but not emotionally going anywhere.
I am very sorry, but you must accept what is before you.
Similarly, it keeps building up something with Rhaenyra and then taking it back a step again. As I said, the last episode ended pivotally on her staring into a bonfire. It was an ominous sense of foreboding ahead, and we've gone back a step again this episode. That happens a lot, and it starts to make the series feel a bit aimless as a result. And similarly, the amount of conversations between Rhaenyra and Alicent now, as much as I say I can understand them, I don't feel like much is developing between them as characters in all of those scenes. I don't see their relationship evolving. They don't feel crucial scenes. It feels more like a way to advance something else plot-wise. But I do like that interesting moment where it appears Helena must be pregnant. I don't know what's going on there, but it's much needed development for her character, who has been largely sidelined. The CGI budget appears to be smaller than in previous seasons too, but not the heaviest criticism from me here. My criticisms are small, but I also don't think this episode hits the heights that the last one did. We've just lost a little bit of momentum, but I did have a good time. Also, Sunfire is definitely alive in my opinion. I feel like the dragon would have started decomposing by now otherwise. But this is my video, so comment your thoughts, good or bad. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe, maybe support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Luke Gore, Michael Gallagher, Emery, Faithy, DQM, Kinesthetic, Maury, Sebastian, Alicia, Chad Bramwell and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.